Honorable today's speakers, all participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Please be upon you all and good afternoon. We're delighted to welcome you to this panel session of the fourth day of the 52nd of Asia Pacific Advanced Network hosted by Universitas Islam Indonesia in collaboration with APAN Secretariat. Ladies and gentlemen, so it is with special excitement that I'm pleased to welcome Hilary to today's keynote session. Hilary Henneho is the Secretary General of the Research Data Alliance, or RDA. Hilary is responsible for the financial and organizational sustainability of RDA on an international level and is the CEO of the RDA Foundation Offices Global and Europe. She is passionate about the work of the Research Data Alliance and its vibrant volunteer community working to enable the open sharing and reuse of data across the globe. Now, please welcome and join us in the keynote session. Hilary, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much. I will share my screen. Thank you for the wonderful, I'm very honored to have this invitation today to speak to you and in a keynote panel, albeit virtual. Like all of us, it would be so nice if we were together in an auditorium where we'd have a chance to interact a little bit more. But my presentation today will give you some insights into that wonderful community that, thank you very much for that nice presentation, that I represent of the Research Data Alliance, a global community of volunteer data professionals and stakeholders from all over the world. So I give this presentation as the Secretary General of the Alliance, just to say that you, of course, you may tweak and reuse these slides. I will make them available after the event. And most, if not all of the examples that I show are by the community and in the spirit of the Research Data Alliance Open to All. So let me start a little bit on a high level. There's many things to say about research data and the Research Data Alliance. I won't be able to cover them, I'm afraid, in the 20 minutes that I should have to address you. So bear with me. I hope that I will give you a flavor of some of the activities that we are able to do and the broad and vast landscape that is covered. So, I mean, what we do know is that there's an abundance of data out there, of technologies, of hardware and software and things. We live in a very, I suppose, if you like, if you're an optimist and you're a technologist, a wonderful time where there are so many technological advances, no? And I think that coupled with the skills and the knowledge that is out there has made the world, if you like, flat from a certain perspective. And so some of the barriers and the challenges that we would have been dealing with, 10, 20, 50 years ago are no longer there. That's not to say, of course, that we don't have many challenges still to overcome, but I'm an optimist at heart, and I believe that we have made great progress. In fact, I suppose, unfortunately, this global pandemic has shown us what progress can be made, and that how open science and the open sharing of data and scientific results can support and accelerate research, development, and innovation. Now, again, we've addressed them ourselves in the Research Data Alliance, particularly around the data sharing aspects of COVID. There are challenges to that. It's a new, if you like, field, but I think that we can without doubt say that there has been progress, and therefore, to my mind at least, underlines the fact that open science is fundamental and must be here to stay and be progressed. So, I mean, when I say open science and research data management and things like that, like what do I mean really, if you like, and what do we mean by that? So let's start with open science, yeah, because, and this is a very high level generic definition of it, but all encompassing, I hope. So open science is the movement to make scientific research, which includes publications and physical samples, data, and of course the software, and its dissemination, accessible to all levels of society. And that includes amateur and professional, so our citizen science as well as our scientists and researchers and others. Open science is and should be transparent and accessible knowledge that is shared and developed through collaborative networks. So, quite a broad, as I said, definition of that. But in fact, later on this year, UNESCO will publish and ratify, I believe is the correct word, their recommendations and guidelines on open science, which I'm really pleased to say have been, the fruit of a lot of work, but also consultation with the stakeholders, and therefore giving, if you like, a global understanding and blueprint also to help us in this quest to, how would you say, implement open science and to see it progress. I think it's particularly important as well when we talk about research data, yes, and the management, of course, of that research data. But we talk about research data and it's, most times publicly funded. And so the concepts around it as well is to ensure that the investment that has been made by governments and stakeholders across the world can, of course, bring to fruition discoveries and things like that, but also be made available and be preserved. So research data management, if you like, involves the active organization and maintenance of data throughout the whole research cycle or process. And of course, archiving of data at the time of completion, because that's also a very important thing. And it's an ongoing and constant activity throughout the life cycle of data. And so you can see here, I show you the one I think that's possibly the most used. There are very many interpretations, by the way, of the research data management life cycle. This is the one from the UK Data Archive. But it involves these, main steps: the data creation, processing the data, then analyzing it, preserving it, giving access to it, and then its reuse. And we should ask ourselves, who's responsible for all of those steps and how many stakeholders and actors are involved in those? And what's the role of the researcher themselves? And I think this is a bone of contention or a challenging one, because researchers and scientists, of course, have studied for many years and do lots of research on their particular area of expertise. And now they find themselves in this unusual position of having to wrangle data, as we say, and i.e., clean the data, prepare the data, structure the data, make it if you like, according to a plan that then it can be brought through this data life cycle. And there are many, we often blame the researchers, or you hear them saying, oh, but the open science is challenged or is slow because researchers themselves are not willing to do this. But on the other hand, is that fair to ask them to spend 80% of their time wrangling data? So the statistics say that researchers, if they were to follow this process, would spend 80% of their time wrangling the data. So they need support from data scientists, from all the actors, including yourselves, of course, and from many different softwares and tools to help support and ensure that this research data management life cycle, which of course is a huge contribution to open science, is available. And just briefly, look at this one. This is the curation life cycle model now. So even more complex. So look at all the different steps that would be, and the possibilities, of course, of the curation aspect. And of course, the preservation of data is very important. Where is the data held? Where will it be stored? How will it be stored? How much of it is to be stored and preserved for the future. So huge, if you like, decisions to be made that indeed require the expertise and skills of many people. And then we have fair data. So when I started my journey with the Research Data Alliance many, many years ago, and I've been in the data field, though it's not my expertise, I'm more of a manager, if you like. I'm not a researcher, I don't have a scientific background. We didn't talk about fair data. So fair data came, if you like, into the arena in 2014, 2016, when the principles of fair data, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable were defined. And the Research Data Alliance was the venue for the start of that, if you like, though it was Force 11 and another group, but we're pleased that one of the meetings was held there. But actually, you know, it's an acronym that now you hear on the lips of everybody in the data field, in the data landscape. Many of the funders are bringing it in as that the data must be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. But I mean, that's also means that there should be, there can be machine intervention, if you like, and that there's, you know, that it's, what do we call it? The machine actionability is emphasized in fair data. And there are many, the principles are quite well detailed, and there are many activities around how fair data should be, you know, how you can structure for fair data. But it's also a very complex world, but an important one for researchers. But so why are these aspects important? You know, why should we care about the management of research data? Well, I think that it's important, and these are just a few of the examples, that, you know, obviously in the quest and in the support of open science, we can increase the pace of knowledge, discovery, and scientific progress. No, very importantly, we can avoid the duplication of efforts and silos. And we can solve the grand challenges of society by ensuring that data that has been, that scientific research, its results and the samples are available for reuse, for implementation in other scenarios and coupling them. So the advantages are endless. Of course, the challenges are many. So what about the Research Data Alliance? Well, how can that help? And what's our role in that? So the Research Data Alliance is a very grand vision, let me tell you, a grand and ambitious one, but not unachievable, I think. It's that researchers and innovators openly share and reuse data across technologies, across disciplines, and across countries to address the grand challenges of society. And that fundamentally means that we aim to ensure or to support this vision that at any time, in any place, with any technology, researchers and innovators can access the data and therefore make increase scientific discovery and new scientific discoveries. So how do we do that? Well, we do that through building the social and the technical bridges to enable that vision of open sharing and reuse of data. And the social bridges are just as important as the technical ones. So the technical aspects, of course, of the developing solutions and I like to think of them as little Lego blocks towards the building of open science. But the social aspect, as I said, is fundamental, because you need to create collaboration, you need to create networks, you need to offer the people the opportunity to come together, to build trust and to build collaboration so that we can do this. So we put equal emphasis on both. Though we're finding it a little challenging to support the networking in this virtual world at the moment, like many. So just a few words about where does the Research Data Alliance come from? Well, and why? Well, basically, there was a lot of discussion between 2010 and 2012 between funders, and they agreed and aligned on the fact that the pace, if you like, of innovation and this acceleration of technologies really needed some sort of support from the perspective of research data challenges and sharing and data. And so they agreed to align funding programs. So the Research Data Alliance is actually funded in different parts of the world. It's not a global organization per se as an intergovernmental organization. However, it is a non-profit, charitable organization that represents the community. And the vision, as I say, and the mission are those. And I'll tell you a little bit of how we are. So we were launched officially in March 2013, and now here we are in 8 years on in 2021. And there's been considerable growth. One of the fundamental things about the Research Data Alliance and everything that we do, every decision that we make, are our guiding principles. Principles of openness, of consensus, of inclusivity, of harmonization, that it's community driven, and that it's non-profit and technology neutral. All of the Research Data Alliance activities and outputs are open for and available for involvement during their development and take up and implementation afterwards. That is the principle upon which we are founded. It's the principle upon which I make every decision and all the work that we do and our governance boards as well. So what is the heart, I suppose, or the family of the Research Data Alliance is almost 12,000 individual members. So they are data experts, professionals from all over the world who are, how would you say, involved in the heart and the work of the Research Data Alliance. They are volunteers. It is free to become a member of the Research Data Alliance, and anyone can get involved at any level in which you like. You can sign up to be a member. We ask you to adhere, of course, to those guiding principles and get involved in work. You can drive work. You can just observe and find things out and take part in events and things like that. We also have, as another part of what we call our family, organizational members. We have 53 organizations and then 12 affiliates. The affiliates are organizations a little like ourselves who have mutual, if you like, objectives and mission. And for example, CODATA, so the International Science Committees on Data, or the World Data System, DataSite, ORCID, they're some of our, and the Coalition of Open Access Repositories are some of our affiliate members, to give you an understanding. And they provide, as part of our family, the organizational perspective. So, you know, what are the challenges that these different stakeholders, these libraries, infrastructures, NRENs like yourself, universities, academia, private commercial publishers, what are the challenges that they are facing from a data sharing and reuse perspective, from a fair data perspective, from an open science perspective? And how can the Research Data Alliance community help? And how can we then implement the outputs? So we have members from 145 countries across the globe. So I think you can say that we're a fairly global organization. We have quite a heavy Northern Hemispheric community, which is related to the fact that the funding programs were in the US and the EU as well, and considerable amount of effort has been invested there due to these funds to grow the community. We have a strong objective to increase our Southern Hemispheric cohort, including the identification of champions and players in there who can help to support to ensure that everybody benefits from the Research Data Alliance and knows about it too. So what about the heart of RDA? So the work itself. Well, it's done through, and I'll show you very briefly afterwards how, through different activities, working and interest groups and communities of practice. We have at the moment 92 active groups working on different aspects. And so far, the community has developed over 50 outputs or flagship outputs, some of which are guidelines or blueprints, some of which are standards, are recognized as standards, code. So there are many different types of outputs that we have, all open, all available for reuse and implementation. And just, I won't go into this much, but just to show you, so that this, as I said, is the heart of how things work. And working groups are very focused. They have, they're the ones that, if you like, come out with the standards or the tools and things. They're very focused. They do the work for a certain amount of time, and then they basically move into maintenance mode. We have interest groups that are important because that's where you can discover and define the different, shall we say, more focused challenges that working groups can can start working on, and they go for as long as they are active. We have many around data management plans. Oh, there are so many research data for libraries, the interest groups. And then we have communities of practice. They're new since this year, and they have a very specific domain and disciplinary focus. And why is that? Just a word on that. It's because we've seen that there are many disciplines and domains that are struggling with the data challenges. There are many activities in RDA that can help, and the coordination, if you like, the bridge between the community itself, in this case, for example, the one we have on agricultural data, and and all the players and stakeholders in that agricultural data field and agricultural field, and then the data experts. So we've decided to launch this communities of practice thing, which is a more global coordination aspect. So a few words before I finish on how does this help. So a few examples, and as I said to you, we have over 50 outputs, so it's going to be hard for me to hone in on a few, but I'll give you a few examples of outputs that have been developed from the community and how they contribute to parts of the research data management lifecycle, or indeed this open science vision across the globe. So let's start with the first one, and this one I like very much. So the Quartra seal, which is a universal catalogue of requirements, for the core characteristics of trustworthy data repositories. So basically, it's a certification of data repositories, which is a fundamental piece in the sort of the open science and research data management puzzle, because of course, where the data is preserved and stored is important. And I mean, there are many domain-specific repositories, more generic ones, but this Quartra seal is actually the fruit of a Research Data Alliance working group, and the combination of the Data Seal of Approval and the World Data System Certification Scheme. So this is a lovely story that shows also how there were two different certification schemes, which could be a little bit confusing as well for some of the repositories. And they came together to align and to create one in the Quartra seal. So, and as you can see on the screen there are quite a number of repositories now certified. If I'm not wrong, it's over 140 or 160. So we're very proud of this output as one from RDA. It's quite a significant contribution to the community, but also indeed to say that we not only this, but that we reduced the number of standards in the world by one. What about data skills? I talked before at the beginning about the data wrangling, and 80%, they say, is the statistic that a researcher in order to, truly abide by some data, if you like, to structure their data, would spend 80% of their time preparing the data. And I don't think it's fair, but it is also true that it's not feasible that there are data scientists available in all universities, in all infrastructures, and in all, if you like, of these players where they can, be of support. It would be great. It's a great ambition to have, but let's be realistic. At the moment, it's not possible. Again, within the Research Data Alliance, as a collaboration with CODATA, the International Science Council Committee on Data, they have created the CODATA and RDA data schools. And the idea is to create the communities of research that have foundational data science skills to enable efficient and effective research. And they have two curricula. One is being developed now, so the data scientist and the data steward. And of course, there's a very large focus in this particular data school on supporting lower and middle income countries to achieve, if you like, and to offer these data skills. And so far, 11 schools have taken place around the world in 5 different continents. Over 500 students, we believe, have passed through these data schools. They're usually run for about 2 weeks. $500,000 US of teaching has been invested in the schools, and we didn't spend that. That has been given 100% volunteer. And these schools are still ongoing. Of course, they're all fully virtual for the last 2 years, which has been proved to be a big challenge, but one they will overcome. and also one I think that will support indeed the fact of deploying and making these schools more accessible to people around the world. So I hope that perhaps we might see some in the ASEAN area in the future through the data schools. But that's a contribution, if you like, to the data skills and knowledge aspect. A very quick one on the agriculture. Yeah, I like this story because that list with the tick boxes on the side are 6 different outputs of the Research Data Alliance recommendations. So guidelines for weak data interoperability, 23 things for libraries for research data, very important, simple but useful guidelines for things around research data, the fair sharing registry, dynamic data citation, so that whole complexity around dynamic data and how can you cite dynamic data like seismic data and things like that. But what's the story here I'd like to tell is how actually one of the French agricultural research agency, which is a very large research agency, they redesigned their open science policy and implemented and used and based on data standards for agriculture on outputs for RDA. And so we're proud to show how RDA can also contribute to the organizational aspects in this open science landscape. So there's details on that, but just interesting. Now, I'm coming towards the end, but one, I thought of this actually just before I started. So there are many global open research or open science commons cropping up all over the world, like little mushrooms. And they aren't necessarily just geographical. There are, domain specific or discipline specific, if you like, in continent. I mean, in Europe, there's a lot of talk about the European Open Science Cloud. We have, the National Institutes of Health have things, the Australian Research Data Commons, who are a partner in RDA. And then there are, many other ones. But I think the important thing is here that, again, with this view to reducing the duplication of efforts, of trying to, how would you say, stop the creation of silos. It's very important to coordinate across these different open research commons to share knowledge and to have, how would you say, interact together. And so this group, and I think the NRENs have a very important role to play here in this, if you like, the development of open research and open science commons. And so this interest group, and all of our groups are open for anyone to join now. So you just sign up and then you go find the group and join it. The links are in the slides. And being part of the discussion around that. The last example I think I give you is the NRENs, how they support the data lifecycle. And this, by the way, with full disclosure, the link is gone from it, but is a work in progress through a group. When I send the link, the slides, I would make sure the link is in it. But there is a group starting up in RDA driven by Arnett and Géant and many of the others, and you're all welcome to join if they continue, is to understand how the data life cycle and how the NRENs can support that. And that's a very important piece of work. So, I mean, what do we say at the end? I think there are, the message is there are abundance of research data management, open science solutions available. Yeah, there are many of them available. Of course, we need to sort through them, but there's lots of progress being made. As I said, I think the NRENs have a fundamental role to play, and I wonder, is it a little underdeveloped, the visibility that you have and the importance of your role. And the Research Data Alliance, we offer these global solutions and a platform to collaboratively develop new ones. It's all free, it's all open, it's all accessible to all. And we would welcome a stronger collaboration very much with the NRENs from across the globe. And as I said, with a particular emphasis on your region, because I don't think we could say it's fully global unless. So we're all about collaboration, cooperation, and co-creation. And I love this. I've taken this as the mantra for RDA since I took on this role in 2018. So if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I think that's a wonderful thing for the progress in open science and research data management, and in contributing and giving back and solving the ground challenges of society. I think it's a very nice mantra to have. I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. I would like to thank the global community. So I sit here and get the visibility, but it's actually on behalf of this almost 2,000 strong volunteer data professional community. And I'm very proud and honored to represent them here. I'd be very happy to discuss more at the spatial chat, of course, at 3 p.m. So after the panel session, I'll be available there. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Hilary, for enlightening and interesting presentation. All participants, ladies and gentlemen, the next session is the panel session, and chairing this session is Gerrit Palmen. So, Gerrit Willem Palmen is currently the Deputy Chair of the Asia Pacific Advanced Network, having just completed his term as Chair. He is also the Deputy Chair of the Board of Governors of the PAN-CC and a member of the Steering Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Gerrit Palmen. The screen is yours.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. Am I being heard? Let me just check first of all.
Yep.
Excellent. That's a better start than last time I did this. So welcome everyone to this panel session. The topic today is the impact of COVID on universities now and into the future. As was mentioned, I'm a member of the APAN board, and it's my pleasure to introduce our four speakers and to act as panel chair. Our four speakers are, firstly, Professor Roshan Ragel, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Learn in Sri Lanka. And then we have Roxanne Missingham, who is the Chief Scholarly Information Officer and University Librarian at the Australian National University. Our third speaker will be Steve Maddox, who is the Director International Developments at the Australian Academic and Research Network, AARNet. And finally, Dr. Seema Khanna, who is the Deputy Director General and Director Operations of India's National Knowledge Network. So our general topic today is the impact of COVID on universities from both a current and future perspective. And our speakers have knowledge and experience of how we're coping, how we've coped so far, and they'll give us insights into which of those impacts are short-term and which are likely to be long-term changes in the way in which higher education institutions conduct their teaching and their research. So let me invite our first presentation. We're going to do 4 perspectives, and then we'll have questions after that. If you would like to ask questions as people are speaking, could you please pop them into the Q&A, and we'll have a look at them. And then once the speakers have all spoken, we can fire those questions at them. So that's how we'll do it. So can I welcome Professor Roshan Ragel to speak to us?
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Sri Lanka. Let me get started. I assume you can see my screen shared.
We can.
Yeah, thank you. Right. So let me take a quick state on Sri Lanka, or the Learn's perspective regarding this topic, impact of COVID on universities. So we'll take an in-rent perspective particularly, and then we can also discuss the university's perspective if we get time, and as I'm also part of a university as a professor. Just to start everything with, we started in Sri Lanka in March 2020. We closed all the universities first time. In fact, like since then, we keep on closing and opening multiple times. I'll discuss that as we go. So when we started this, the first thing we did within a week or less than a week, in week times, what we did was first we decided to go online, and the important and the first thing we did was we made all our content to our students accessible free of charge, which is done through a government initiative with the support of the NREN. So all our NREN IPs were whitelisted so that anyone who is within the country can access data from there for free. So we call this effort as online free education effort, and I quote the telecommunication regulatory DG on this. So just to give you some numbers, we started, like I said, in March, and since then we had seen 3 different times opening and closures, and every time when we come back, we are reflecting on the usage and all that based on the video conferencing platform we are hosting and how the usage of that platform is. And as you can see, in the first wave, we had monthly usages as shown, and then we keep on increasing. For the interest of time, I'll just move on. So here's the weekly usage, and I wanted to highlight a perspective here. So when we started in last year, we had about 3,200 users, 320,000 users per week. These are all academic users. So in total, we have our NREN is serving about 150,000 undergraduate users and about 100,000 postgraduate users. So 250,000 users we are serving here. So and then when it happened again, the second wave, we moved from, you can see the numbers, it's doubled almost. And then recently the numbers are again double one more time. So every time we come back, we see things like the usage of online activities increasing. Just to give a summary, as of now, we have had about 1 million meetings since March 2020 and other numbers. So what are the challenges we faced as an NREN and also as an academic and research community? I'm going to just quickly discuss those. I see the challenges as mainly due to the nature in which how we operate since the COVID. So that is like the flipped setup. So usually we used to have all our users in our member institutions, and our main role is to support them at the institution, providing content from outside and so on. But now things have changed, and due to that, we also have to change our backbone, particularly things like our connectivity to the internet exchange locally. Because all our users are now outside the institution, but the content, reasonable amount of it is inside the institution, plus there are content that are coming from outside, from other institution and other sources as well. So in terms of this flipped setup, when we had study from home, study from campus, we had the most of the infrastructure, like I mentioned, on campus we are focusing, and therefore we had to give connectivity mainly to the campus. The NREN's responsibility is that, and IX played or internet exchange played a lesser role. But now it has come as study from everywhere, anywhere, and therefore the focus is on not particularly on the infrastructure that we are already focusing on, but on the national infrastructure, because our participants are everywhere, anywhere and everywhere. And therefore the focus is moving to the national infrastructure. And the NRENs have become not only the connectivity provider, but also the content provider, because the content are inside the institution, most of it. And therefore the IX plays an important role as well. So the challenges we faced due to this change is that we also have, in addition to the usage in higher education, but on research, because the users are everywhere, the country's citizens are everywhere, and therefore, I mean, like even the usual users had a lot of additional users. For instance, if you take a country like Sri Lanka, our data consumption has increased 50% in the country, and on top of it, we are also going to provide the education and research content to everyone around the country, because all are at home. And also we see other issues, things like digital divide playing a major role compared to different parts of the country. It's easier to bring students to a central place and providing all these services easily, but then now they are everywhere, and therefore it has become a major problem. And also there are other issues related to NREN resources. and requirements. So what we have done? So a certain number of things we have done. One I already have mentioned, that we have made all these content which are on the NREN network, free for free to access and free without charge for all the users who are on our external networks, things like ISPs, and we increased the usage, and also we added public edu-ROM, used edu-ROM as a solution, and added about 100 public edu-ROM hotspots around the country. And we also introduced edu ID, which was not part of the deal earlier. We had the federated identity and also institutionalized identities of at certain institutions, or most of the institutions, but then there were a few who didn't have such support, and therefore we as an NREN had to come in and provide edu ID. In addition, as a country, we also have invested invested on a certain number of things. One is provide, because like we have identified how the digital divide can be overcome. So the government invested about $200 million on additional infrastructure across the country, which is called Connect Sri Lanka, or Connect Communication to the Village project. So that's something that was done during this period. Plus, we also have invested on institutional infrastructure particularly for content providing, servers and such infrastructure. Plus, the government has also identified the resource need of undergraduates and students, and therefore have allocated some loan scheme, about $50 million on providing computers. So for future, we have planned. So we have identified the need, and also have I had like a number of a presidential task force on education, where a lot of NRENs getting involved, and many others are getting involved, and also the University Grants Commission, who is the apex body of the higher education and research institution. So they have formed another committee to work on future. From Learn perspective, we also have identified this flip requirement, and therefore we have also reimagined our visions and put them together. So in terms of lessons learned, we although COVID is a problem, but we are seeing some need, establishment of need, and we identify a lot of people coming together to work together to the betterment. And based on this, the education itself is reforming, and we are working on a lot of such like blended learning, online education, and all such aspects as well. And that's basically what I have, and thank you for the time. I'll be happy to discuss this in detail later, anyhow time. Over to you again.
Thank you, Roshan. Very, very interesting perspective in terms of how your country's reacted. I'd now like to turn to Roxanne and ask her, from a university librarian's point of view and your experience with ANU, how has COVID impacted the practices and the activities within your institution?
So thank you very much. Can you hear me? Good.
Yes, I can.
Oh, that's lovely. I've had some problems with my microphone, so I just wanted to double check. So I want to say what a privilege it is to be here, and thank you, Hilary, for your presentation, and thank you everyone on this panel for bringing some very different perspectives. So in Australia and New Zealand, we really started by hoping COVID-19 would go away very quickly. And then in around March, the end of March last year, it was very clear that it wasn't. And so most universities moved to have their staff off campus and to be teaching online with a very short preparation, and to be delivering services in a new modality. So we started off thinking we had a strong set of digital services and collections to switch to. For example, we all had electronic learning management systems. In libraries, we'd been purchasing, even in a research university like ANU, 98% of our collection budget had been spent on digital resources. We had the traditional library systems, and So we thought it was a digital world. At that stage, we'd been having around 8 million users of our digital resources and around 140,000 of the physical collection. So we thought we were pretty good in a digital world, but it turned out we had a lot to learn. So for our universities, working with our academics to open up ways to traditional textbooks was a real challenge. We had to negotiate with publishers where the material was often not available digitally already. We had to think about how that would integrate with services in new and different ways. And then we also had to be juggling the physical world because we had quite a lot of students on campuses in residences who, because Australia had locked down, and as of today, of the 8 Australian territories and states, only 3 are not in lockdown. Victoria has just gone down into lockdown again this afternoon for the 4th time. So we had those who were literally locked down on campus. So they were in their halls of residences. They needed to get out so that they wouldn't go mad, and they needed to have support and service from us at a time when we generally didn't have staff on campus. So we had to rethink the physical world. For us, we needed to expand our services because the academics generally couldn't get into the buildings they were working in, but we often would have a library that was open at ANU. We had one library that was open 24/7 and didn't close for one day during the whole period of COVID-19. So academics needed to be able to come here and know that the printer works. We needed to open new labs where virtual lectures could be recorded because we didn't have the infrastructure across the campus consistently. We had to provide spaces where students could engage with those lectures together, because for a lot of them, the most important experience of the university is to be together as people, and the digital experience wasn't quite the same. So we had to really reconnect, start new services that would bring people to collections from libraries that were closed. Nearly every library in Australia has invested and developed a click and collect service, just like the grocery stores. We discovered our systems were not as connected, but we discovered Teams and Zoom with gusto. So what did we find? We found that it was really important to make physical collections available and more accessible. We had to increase the knowledge of our university staff around copyright, around access and control systems, and the vagaries and strengths of using the VPN. There were lots of discoveries, and we changed systems through the process. We discovered that we had to expand our online spaces in a different way than we had thought of in the past. So we needed to say, how could we deliver all of our resources and all of our services as well as possible? We had to connect in different ways with academics because the time to convert courses to new digital resources was very short. We've never experienced having to turn around a whole course in a fortnight, including the content. So it was a collaboration. And I think Hilary's discussion of RDA really speaks to the importance of working together, all of the different parts of our institutions, to make a difference. None of us could work as one. We'd previously thought of our philosophy of equity in terms of access to students through the digital world as what was the student at 2 a.m. hypothetically handing in an assignment at 9 a.m. going to be able to exercise in terms of their digital rights. And that had been a transition we'd been taking for a decade. And all of a sudden we had to completely rethink for students who weren't in a suburb in Canberra, but were in India or in China or in Hong Kong and were working on networks that we had no control over. So that was a radical way of thinking, and we needed to work with our IT colleagues, particularly in cybersecurity, in new and different ways. We found we had different concepts of online delivery between the different disciplines in the university, and we had to build our knowledge in order to understand how things like systematic reviews in medicine could be supported in a different way to archaeology, where they wanted to have more modelling and more digital humanities facilities. For us, it was important, again, going back to Hilary's theme, that we reached out to colleagues around the world. So for us, HathiTrust, which started off with a corpus of knowledge that was the Google Digitisation Project, had about 3,500 publications of ANU that were locked down because they hadn't had copyright permission to release them. So we worked hard to make all of those materials openly accessible on the basis that someone else had already done the hard work and we just had to do the copyright and intellectual work. And so we formed new partnerships. So what will we continue? Teams, SharePoint, Zoom were absolute godsends. We implemented Teams very quickly. We'd been thinking about changing our collaborative infrastructure for quite a while, and it really came online in December the year before last. And then everybody used it. But what we left behind, because we didn't have time to implement, were data governance principles and practices. And what we are now doing is work connecting it with our records management system, training people in data governance and moving things along. Our new access services like Click and Collects, we've turned into operational services. We understand we have to refresh our technology so that those people, say in India and Hong Kong, who are not coming to our induction courses where we explain to them, you go to this system for that and you go to that system for this, are very poorly served. So we are now looking at how we buy an integrated suite of products rather than kludge things together. We've really worked very hard on building the capacity of staff. Our CIO talks about digital literacy and the fact that across the university for academics and for staff, our digital literacy is not very high. We don't know about the systems the university already has. So we're finding ways to inform ourselves, and we developed a program that we delivered 60 modules of during lockdown to refresh our staff and expand their needs, including staff around the university. We need to find ways to understand what has permanently changed in student expectations. They have radically changed the way that they use our services. They expect more online, and we need to be delivering that in a way that doesn't interfere with their experience and means that we can't assume that they will ask the traditional questions that they asked IT or they asked libraries. And we really need to continue to develop our connections with other institutions to enhance cooperation and learning. So we've learnt a lot. It's been a whirlwind experience, and we will continue, I think, to have to both make long-term changes, but deal with the fact that on half a day's notice, a major city or a state can close down. So universities have to deliver different services and come up with new ways. And the technology has been a godsend, but it's been a road that we were partly prepared for, and we need to do more to be sustainable. Thank you.
I'll just find that button to turn the sound on again.
Yes.
Sorry, it just takes a while to get the mouse across and click it. Steve, you have an NREN-ish perspective on this, and I'm sure there'll be parallels between that and what Roshan has been talking about. Can I hand it over to you, please?
Thank you, Jared, and thank you to APAN for giving me this opportunity to speak. Very much appreciated. And yes, much of what I have to say is related in one way or another to Roxanne's excellent talk. Thank you, Roxanne. And either forgive me or thank me, but I don't have any slides to present either. Somewhat deliberately, I thought we would do things slightly differently, but let's see how it goes. I've broken the topic down into three broad areas of impact. I've called them economic, capability and quality, and also, I think, overlooked oftentimes, the social impact across universities and research organizations. Where do I begin? I think the first sign of COVID from a network infrastructure perspective was back in March 2020, predictably, when a network alarm went off for a fairly modest 1 gigabit peering link, and I think it was in Brisbane, of all places. and a bit of a surprise to us. So we had a look into it. And when we analyzed the traffic on that particular link, it was a sort of an OMG moment, because we realized that all of a sudden, very quickly, very rapidly, our traffic was growing at an almost exponential rate, and that much or most of this traffic was coming from AARNet's on-premises Zoom servers. And the penny dropped very, very quickly, that with students and staff going home to study and to work, the traffic pattern on the AARNet network changed dramatically. We had to move very, very quickly, and we worked with a very cooperative telecommunications industry in Australia. We got a lot of help from the major internet service providers, and basically it was upgrade, upgrade, and then upgrade some more. We upgraded 1 gigabit links to 10 gigabits. We upgraded 10 gigabit links to 100 gigabit links per second. And as I said, all of the major ISPs worked hard alongside AARNet to achieve this. But at the same time, our Zoom servers were struggling. They were starting to struggle because of the sheer load suddenly on each of them. And to give you some numbers, and perhaps a graph would have been better, but in all of 2019, AARNet delivered about 150 million Zoom meeting minutes in total. From the 1st of January to the 5th of May 2020, we delivered 1 billion minutes of Zoom meetings and connectivity. And by the 11th of June that year, we went through 2 billion minutes of Zoom meetings and Zoom connectivity. And so that took a lot of hard work to build up both the network infrastructure and the Zoom infrastructure to accommodate that massive increase in the use of Zoom. And of course, it wasn't limited to Zoom. There are other collaborative platforms as well, not least of which Microsoft Teams and Google Meet and WebEx and so on and so on. But I was pleasantly surprised at how quickly AARNet, in conjunction with the telcos, managed to achieve that upgrade. Internationally as well, we had to upgrade significantly. We more than doubled our capacity, our direct capacity from AARNet in Australia to China. And interestingly, traffic to Hong Kong. And AARNet does not have a direct link to Hong Kong, but we received some terrific support, some terrific help from Singapore, of course, and also our good friends at Norginet to extend a research and education path from Australia, from Perth, where I am, up through Singapore and onto Hong Kong. And this was largely to satisfy the traffic, the growth in traffic associated with various universities' use of VPN services, the likes of Alibaba and others. That traffic grew dramatically as well. And again, thanks to Singapore and thanks to Norginet, we were able to accommodate that dramatic increase in traffic through Hong Kong. Some economic figures, I think it's reported that about 27% of Australian universities' revenues are attributed to overseas students. And so when overseas students were no longer able to come to Australia, come to Australian university campuses, clearly it had a very negative impact, so much so that some estimates put the financial loss at more than $6 billion across the sector. But for me, a more disturbing figure is that the broader impact on the economy as a whole, on the national economy, may well be as much as $17 billion in the not too distant future. And so this is from not just the revenues associated with fees, but also retail spend and accommodation spend by students, international, domestic, and so on. Regrettably, I have to report more than 17,000 jobs lost in the sector, which is a terrible statistic to have to report. Having said all of that, the National Education Minister, federal government minister, is quoted as saying, not as bad as we expected, which I thought was an unfortunate thing to say, but who knows, maybe it could have been much, much worse. On to more social impact. There have been a couple of sort of current affair documentaries, some interviews, some current affair shows that have interviewed students in particular. And it seems to me from those and from talking to admittedly a handful of students, what they miss, the students, is the face-to-face contact, the face-to-face communication, the face-to-face socializing. And more than anything, they crave coming back to campus, both international and domestic students. And they crave it not just for, the socializing, if that's not a derogatory term, but largely for their interpersonal development, their leaving home experience, their self-supporting, their independence development, none of which, of course, is possible when you're studying and working from home. For many international students, it's developing their cultural awareness of a different culture than the one from which they come, and they value that most highly. For some students, it's the opportunity to improve their English language, and not just written English, but the colloquial spoken English. That opportunity is lost as well. And to quote one young lady student on a radio program, I think it was, I'm paying for university accommodation so that I can sit behind a screen and study in my own room. And I thought that was quite sad, but I think it represents the fact that students and staff, I suspect, researchers, scientists, and so on, prefer the campus environment, prefer the social interaction, and prefer the human contact. What about the future? Well, I firmly believe that students and staff will return to campus. The light at the end of the tunnel appears to be an eventual, in the Australian context, an eventual successful vaccination program. I think once that gets up to various percentages of 70, 75, 80%, then we'll see the return of overseas students to Australian universities, and we'll also see less of the very unfortunate lockdowns, much like the one announced only hours ago by Roxanne in Victoria again. I honestly have lost count of how many times that state has locked down, but it just seems to be a never-ending cycle at the moment. So predictably, all quite negative at the moment, but I think there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully we get there sooner than later. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Steve. So last but certainly not least, I'm looking forward to Seema's comments. So over to you, Seema.
Thank you, Jared. And I'm glad I'm the last because I got the opportunity to hear some wonderful ideas and wonderful thoughts. So, but keeping in mind, Jared, the topic of today's panel discussion, I would like to deviate a little from, of course, NKN is going to, since I represent NKN, NKN would be part of what I'm going to be talking about, but that I think was going to come later when I am talking. But first, I would perhaps like to talk about COVID, how COVID per se has hit India. India, apart from what NKN did to kind of make things a little easier for the students, but India has been in the news for all the wrong reasons. I mean, we were majorly impacted by COVID. The second wave in particular was quite devastating when it came to India. So at that point in time, saving lives took priority over education for a brief window. But at that point in time, the thought that the schools are closed or the education system is closed did not matter for about a month or so, almost 2 months. So that was a really bad phase of India. But having said that, I would like to talk more about India and then move to how NKN has played a role in there. But when we talk about India, none of us can forget the scale of India. So just to put things into perspective, when I was reading for my talk today, I tried to find out the latest stats when it comes to India. And let me give you a few statistics when we talk, just to give you the magnitude of the problem when we talk about COVID impacting India. India's population today is 1.38 billion. I'm sure Jared and New Zealand would be nothing compared to that. So we are talking about 1.38 billion. Now, 50% of that 1.38 billion are between the age of 0 to 25. That means the learners, the people who are actually impacted it's a very large population. The total student population in India is about 315 million. It's almost a nation. I think this population alone surpasses the full strength of certain nations. So we're talking about 315 million, out of which number of students enrolled in universities and colleges are over 50 million. Out of the 350 million, 50 million of them are in higher education, that's universities and colleges. We have 950 universities and 54,000 colleges. So these stats, the only reason I reveal them is just to give you a magnitude of what India has been reeling in for the past year and a half. If not in numbers, what I'm going to say further, Roshan can draw a parallel from that. Of course, our number is way bigger than what Roshan represents, but this is just to give you a magnitude of the problem. Now, when COVID hit us, India, I would like to segregate my thoughts into two directions. One, of course, is students, who were majorly impacted, but we cannot forget the teachers, because the teachers were not prepared for this onslaught either. Now, unlike Steve and Roxanne, we and Jared, you too, we are not talking about a very IT tech savvy population when it comes to teachers. And you don't expect somebody teaching history in a rural India to know how to handle Zoom, how to handle WebEx. This is something they were not prepared for. And moreover, when we talk about penetration of smartphones in India, we're talking about, although the number is very impressive, as of today, we have over 60 crores of, that's about 600 million smartphones in India. But still, that just covers about 40% of the rural population of that having. So when we talk about COVID, apart from the health, even if we want to enable distance learning, the tools were just not readily available. The past 2 years have kind of been a quantum change, because I firmly believe that COVID, the only positive lining of COVID when we talk about India is that it has accelerated the adoption of technology, which is something which we would have taken years to do. COVID has kind of brought things into perspective, and it forced people to kind of do things. My mother, for instance, she's in touch with an 80-year-old woman, and just to be in touch with her brother, because she couldn't meet him, she learned how to use WhatsApp. So the adoption of technology in a country of my scale COVID has accelerated that, which I'm sure Roshan would also agree to, that technology acceleration has been the only major positive outcome of perhaps COVID. But when we talk about teachers and students, even if the students are tech savvy, the teachers were not good enough there to teach. So I was reading again yesterday, and I came across some very phenomenal stories of this panel. In fact, Jared made me read things which perhaps I was overlooking from my India's perspective. So I came across some in India, we have a term for such people. They're called COVID warriors. We call them COVID warriors because my nation needs one. So I came across a section. Therein, there was a very brilliant story of one teacher, a teacher who teaches political science and the social studies. What that lady decided to do was actually hire one of those tempos, you know, I don't know whether you're aware of the concept of a tempo. It's a tempo. She used to, it's like a auto rickshaw, a three-wheeler kind of a thing. She actually made the effort of driving down every day to the village where the students were, because the students could not come to school. They could not come. So she actually made the effort of driving down, and on her three-wheeler, she had huge loudspeakers so that she could shout out her lessons. And the teachers and the students could just come outside their houses, sit down and listen. Why? Because those kids did not have access to technology. So when we talk about India, apart from the general impact on education, Roxanne spoke about it, Steve spoke about it, Roshan briefly touched upon it. So that has been common. The impact, we all know, education, children have not been going to schools. We all know senior school children are studying from home. We are all working from home. So this impact has generally been a global phenomenon. Some countries have handled it way better because they were more tech savvy. The technology adoption rate was way better than what we have had. But the general impact remains same. But when we talk about India, the whole ball game, the whole conversation kind of changes. I mean, students, what I've seen kids all around me, my own kids, somehow, even if it's a distance learning, the lessons can be beamed out, the lessons can be taught. Even Steve spoke about the social impact. But somehow the children lost focus on the integrity of learning, the associated integrity of learning, the integrity associated with the deadline. That kind of got missed. It slipped through the cracks. So that is something that's been really painful when you see that there have been children who have gone into college, and for 2 years, they've already gone into their third year and they've not stepped foot into college. So apart from the lack of understanding from an education perspective, their complete correlation with others, like Steve also touched upon, it's the complete meltdown. It's just not blending in. They've not learned how to enjoy college life, and it's somehow in their life, because going to college is not only about academics. It's about the whole culture that it presents. My daughter is in Germany, and ever since she went to Germany, she's in lockdown. She's not been able to embrace the culture of Germany. So she's just sitting at home, and then she keeps telling me, Mama, I could have done this back from India. Why did you have to send me from here if it was all distance online I was talking about? But then her survival skills have gone up. She's learned to fend for herself, but that is something, again, a positive fallout of COVID, because she's learned how to adapt. She's learned how to adapt. Her adaptability quotient in life has gone up. To stay alone. I mean, that poor child is locked in a hostel room, and she's getting all her lessons. She's getting beamed down with all the knowledge that possibly her lecturers can share, but she's sitting alone in a room, an 18-year-old child, and handling the pandemic. So her survival skills have gone up. So that is another positive that I associate with COVID, that the survival skills of these students who are the learners, the primary learners, have gone up. And the teachers, they better get tech savvy. If COVID was not coming, they better learn technology. I mean, how difficult it is to handle Zoom. It's difficult for people like us to make sure the platform works stably. He talked about 1 billion hours of VC. It's our job to ensure that we deliver the platform when it's required. But using it should be easy. I mean, my mom should have learned it a decade ago. But this is something that has been it's happened. So that is good. That is something also that is very good. It's happened, it's good. So we also have, I don't know whether your countries have it or not, but we actually are calling the class 12th and grade 12 student the COVID batch. You know, we have jokes associated with that look at the table below and the child is looking under the table, you know. So you say, oh shucks, it's not his problem, it's the COVID batch, because he doesn't know where to look from. So it's been a different learning altogether. Now, that was more about the impact of COVID on India, because we didn't have access to technology. And then the other thing, we had, but it was not at the right place. I wouldn't like to say that we had not yet translated our sessions online. They were all there, but they were not readily available to beam out. I mean, they were not collected at one place because none of us could see this coming. So although we have brilliant MOOCs platforms, we have brilliant online platforms, but the assimilation and the overnight work, which NKN, again, I'll touch upon this when we come to NKN, but that is where NKN played a key role in assimilation of all the printed and the digital documents and data that we had, and put it all into one place, consolidate it, and kind of beam it out. So that what required a lot of momentum. That required a little time to move on. So there was a brief window where we could not respond as effectively as we should have, but then we soon recovered from that. So our authorities actually we have brilliant platforms called Gyan Kosh, that's an Indian terminology called repository of materials. We have Gyan Dhara, which is an Indian term for flow of knowledge. So the Swayam means do it yourself. So these are just name of platforms that my government rolled out absolutely immediately for the learning of the children. Now I would like to touch upon RNE community, because we are all entrants and we are impacted. We have COVID has impacted RNE also. So RN, research and education, no debate, has definitely going to take a major hit in the future. If for nothing else, everything was put on hold. All efforts were deviated and directed towards containing the pandemic. Whatever research you were doing was put on hold, funds were put on hold. So that is definitely going to take a major hit in the future to come. Now, again, when we talk about India, back to India, COVID has even impacted students like, I don't know how many of you have ever read about how India encourages children to come to school. That is not a challenge which perhaps you face. We actually have to encourage children in rural India to come to schools, come to colleges. So we have a concept called midday meal. Midday meal is a concept where you tell children that if you come to school, you'll be offered free meals. So that in the rural India. So now when the schools closed down, children were deprived of a very major nutrition element in their life. They did not get those meals because they were no longer coming to school. So that was again a very, a impact which we, but education apart, the student used to look forward to those wonderful warm, hot meals he used to get from school. That nutrition was also a negative fallout of what happened. So now I come to what NKN. I don't have slides again, like Steve and Roxanne. I did not create slides. I prefer to talk about it. Now, NKN has played obviously a major role. We have not slept. I got corona in the earlier days of the pandemic. So that is the time when I don't know how many of you have heard of Arogya Setu. That is the COVID contact tracing app of India, which is the largest app. So I was rolling that out also. So at that point in time, again, we've forgotten how to sleep in NKN, which I think is very true for both Steve and Roxanne and Roshan also, and Jared, you too. So what NKN did was what it always does. One, ensure never the network fails. The 12 petabyte of data that roams around and which NKN download that continue to remain consistent. The single point of failures were not allowed to fail at all. We don't have any single point of failures. We video conferencing, Zoom, Cisco, Google, they were all. Now, initially, we even had the challenges of making sure the licenses were available to all the universities. That itself was a challenge because people had not bought the amount that they wanted. They had very few licenses for a few sessions, but the volumes were just not available. So making those volumes of licenses available to them, that was one thing. But then again, when you talk about India, the licenses are made available to the person who's teaching. What about the person who's actually receiving? You don't have a very high connectivity back home. The student is sitting at home. So how is he going to be effectively connected to the lesson that is being beamed out? So what NKN offered was, NKN is present in all the districts and everywhere across the country. So what we announced to everyone is anybody is free to come to the closest NKN office and sit down there and actually hear the lessons. So we made sure in our VC studios, we allowed students, whoever approached us, to be allowed to beam down and listen to the students, even take a printout of the downloads. When we download huge assignments coming out, it's a big volume, it's a big file. How do you download it on a very low speed network? You need a high speed network to download that volume. Take a printout of that. So NKN empowered that also. We, for about 100 or 200 odd institute of ours, we made the change in bandwidth from 1 gig to 10 gig in a period of overnight. Overnight, we upgraded multiple core links. The core link was anyway 10 and 100. We upgraded the endpoint links, the last mile links overnight, about over 100 of them, depending on the request, so that people could hold their exams. They could hold their interviews. PhD interviews were going on. None of that we allowed anything to come to a halt to. But having said all that about COVID and its impact on India, like Steve also mentioned, I think it's high time we go back to being physical. We need to go offline. We've been online for the past year and a half. We need to go offline. We need to go offline now because it's the lethargy is going tend to setting into our brain now. We are forgetting the human contact, the human touch, the power of a human contact is somehow getting diluted in this prospect. So it's high time we go back to being online. I hope we don't have another wave coming in. But I would like to mention one thing that which NKN did brilliantly in this, for which it was very lauded, which again has got a very brilliant use case for India. And Roshan, perhaps you can take a cue from this. I don't know whether you've done this or not, but if you haven't, you can perhaps take a cue from this. What we did was a large number of our universities do not have residents. I mean, it's not residential. Students come and they go home. So wherever there are universities and where there are colleges, where in the colleges where you have campuses inside, where students stay inside in the hostel, Wi-Fi and all is readily available. But where there is not, it was a problem. So what we did was we put hotspots on the perimeter of those colleges with a range of 200, 300 meters. So anybody in that area, whether it was a villager, whether it was urban, whether it was anybody, could just connect to that SSID and leverage that Wi-Fi. So that is something we did for about more than 100, 200 of our colleges, more than that. I wish we get the funding so that we can do it for many more, because that actually changed the landscape. Because Wi-Fi is not so easily available in rural. You do not get access to high-speed network. So we actually put these hotspots on the perimeter of more than 200 colleges. And as a result, the complete community around them got access to free Wi-Fi, high-speed network, which made them do their studies, anything associated with that. So with this, I'd like to end my talk, and I hope I stuck to my timelines, Jared. And thank you for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seema. That was a very rich description of what's been going on in your country. So I'm left with thinking about the 1918 pandemic. And the thing that sprung in my mind was the lessons learnt in 1918 were forgotten in 1922. And a lot of the things that people did and the way they managed the pandemic at that time were surprisingly similar to the things that we've done in our countries. So the question really is, what are the lessons that we must not forget? What are the lessons we've learned from this that we need to carry forward and hold on to? So can I go around the panelists, and ask each of you if you have any thoughts about that? Go on, Roshan, you go first.
Thank you. In fact, I think all of us agreed upon a certain number of things, that particularly lessons learned and how we can move forward. So one, now we have started, particularly from Sri Lanka's perspective, and I assume India will come on board on the same perspective. So we have accelerated our digitization, or digital transformation as we call it. So we have accelerated it a lot, and we are trying our best to keep that going, and bringing in the policymakers, bringing in the government, and telling them, okay, see, like, this is what has happened and this is what you see, and we should keep this going. And even Australia's perspective, you're saying if something is closed down, something is locked down, in a half a day's time, can we flip everything and start keep on going, right? So that needs a lot more. So right now, yes, we have put some nice numbers, but this is the good side of things. But there are a lot of challenges, particularly with what I mentioned about flipped setup. All our rural areas have similar issues. Whatever Seema mentioned, we also have them, but in a smaller scale. That's the only difference. But we also have similar issues. We also have same problems on a smaller scale. That's the only difference. So we have learned a lot, and we have learned that we can do better, and we have seen how different. So with the globalization, we also can see how different entrants are doing, how different higher education communities are doing, and therefore we are planning, we are trying and reimagining how we can do better. So that is something that we learned. We also learned that we can do them, and therefore we are pushing forward. So that's something we are going to keep on doing. Yes.
Roxanne, what's the key learning point that you think needs to be held on to for the future? What's the similar question?
So I want to take Steve's point about social communities. That in fact what we've done, and I love that comment about the student under the table not being able to communicate with others effectively. So particularly the work that we've done to connect communities, who are in Hong Kong or China, using local systems like WeChat, that when we bring people back together, we need to learn what worked and to keep people connected beyond their study, but we need to be able to reinterpret and bring things together. And the one comment I wanted to make here, in fact, I was talking to the Dean of the School of Medicine here, who was saying because she couldn't get the medical students together, they couldn't do anatomy, they couldn't do all those physical things together. So they really focused on how could they use digital technology to improve their personal skills, their ability to listen to patients, their ability to actually develop the people skills that we often think we're not doing when we're going online and it's all impersonal. And she said that will actually make a generation of better doctors. And I think one of the reflections I have is that we can take some really positive things away from this and say, what did we improve? And then how could we fill in the gaps and take that long-term perspective and accelerate it? But digitization, I completely agree with you. Digitize, digitize, digitize. Thank you.
Steve, what's your perspective on learnings?
Well, I think we learned something that we already knew, if that's not a silly thing to say, and it is to plan ahead for worst case scenarios, and be able to mobilize very quickly against that plan. Again, I must say I'm biased, but I think ARNet and NRENs generally did a pretty good job of doing that. But then, to be fair, NRENs generally are different to conventional telecommunication companies in as much that they generally have the infrastructure in place, perhaps not quite enough of it. It might sound like a negative comment, but to prepare for the worst, I think. And if we did it again, we would have more inventory on our shelves, more equipment ready to go. Supply chain has been a terrible issue, continues to be a difficult issue. It's all very well saying, yes, we all agree to spend the money on this new equipment and those new links and so on. But actually procuring them is a lot harder during a crisis like this. And so simplistic, I know, but be prepared.
So the thing that made me smile a little was thinking about 1922 and thinking about what happened immediately afterwards. And I'm pretty sure there would have been people walking around saying, gosh, we need to be prepared for this. If it ever happens again, we need to plan for it. So then the Western world rushed into the roaring 20s. And I think the planning went out the window.
Yeah.
The celebration of being beyond it, being past it. So I think your point is a really good point. We need to remember the importance of planning. The risk we run is that people are going to wear short skirts and dance in the streets and celebrate the end of the First World War. Yeah. So finally, Seema, what's the learning point that you would like people to retain going forward?
Firstly, I think I would totally agree with Steve. We do deserve a pat on the back in terms of a network that we have delivered. Since we are having this connectivity, we are having this session, we have a tale to tell. So it means we survived whatever was created to destroy, and we managed to survive and tell a tale. But I just hope that the next generation should not say that, oh, there was one in 2020 and I didn't think they learned well enough. So Steve's point of be prepared, and don't forget, we should not have a short-term memory of this pandemic. We should carry forward our narrative to anybody, other younger generations, and we don't allow anybody to forget what we have endured in the past 2 years. The nightmare should be remembered, and for nothing else, it should be remembered so as to continue being prepared. So that is one, of course, that the nightmare should not be forgotten, even though it's a nightmare. Secondly, technical perspective, of course, digitization in India. Oh, India, we are on a roll. We are on a roll. COVID pushed them and we are absolutely on a roll. And the third thing, which has been a personal thing for me, but COVID, if nothing else, made us pause in life. It put our life on a pause button. We learned to value the human touch. We learned to value a mother's hug. I mean, I don't recall having hugged my mother more often than I did in 2 years that I was the past year and a half. So my personal takeaway from this, apart from the technology brilliance that we're all trying to be innovating, and another thing that COVID did was unleash the brilliance of the human mind. We have never been more creative, and more creative and innovations that have emerged in the past 2 years have kind of, it's been true. But my personal takeaway is we should not take family for granted. They matter. They really matter. And I am so glad I got that time to spend with my mom, which she keeps crying, Seema, take a day off. But Seema was forced to take a day off and sit with her. So technical and personal, I have 2 takeaways. Thank you, Jared.
Well, thank all 4 of you for the wonderful contribution. I was just thinking that the one thing we mustn't do is let a good disaster go to waste. We need to take advantage of it and make it work for us going forwards. Now, can I invite everybody that's here and listening? We need to finish at this point, but there is, of course, the opportunity to go to the spatial chat APAN52 site, and all of us will go there, and we look forward to any questions that we haven't answered and we haven't picked up on, and we'll have a chat with whoever turns up. So thank you very much, everybody. Well done. Appreciate your time and your effort in these presentations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jared, for chairing the panel session, and also thank you to the speakers for a very insightful presentations and also productive discussion. All right, all participants, ladies and gentlemen, so actually, this is the last day of our panel session, since tomorrow is our General Assembly. And after this, we still have the agenda of the social time. Thus, we would like to remind you to kindly check your chat box and also access the link to join for the social time in the spatial chat. All right, ladies and gentlemen, all the participants, now I would like to close this session with a quote by Stewart Brand, an author and innovative thinker, who said that we can see the past but not influence it. We can influence the future but not see it. So everyone, let's be guided by all the things we have learned and heard throughout the conference, and be able to see and influence our future. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all participants, once again, thank you very much for your precious time joining this conference. And the last from me, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.